Finally, we can say it. Excess deaths are at a record high. Meanwhile, conspiracy theorists are doing studies to see if one of the Pfizer vaccines causes strokes. Sorry, not conspiracy theorists, the CDC. Hello there, you 6 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining me on this voyage towards ultimate truth, a personal awakening and transcendence of the set of systems within yourself that keep you confined to ignorance. Maybe if we awaken individually, we can do something powerful collectively together by telling the truth, by allowing opposing opinions to be discussed in an open forum, by maintaining our hope and our strength, by subscribing and turning on the notification bell because the algorithm and whoever controls algorithms are against us. And you can see why they would be, because when you're telling the truth in the midst of a narrative lockdown, while information is being controlled, while propaganda is flowing fast, you put yourself in a great deal of jeopardy. That's why I want to thank you for keeping us awakened and enlightened with your comments below. Keep that truth coming because it benefits us hugely. Even if these excess deaths are nothing to do with certain medications, if they're simply the consequences of the lockdown, that is still a sign of great ineptitude. Certainly some people believe there's a correlation between excess deaths and certain medications, which I can talk about more freely over on Rumble. We'll be showing you in a minute Asim Malhotra, guest of our show, and I'm assuming inadvertent guest on the mainstream media, because when he was invited on to talk about statins, he started blathering on about certain medications and their consequences. So let's look at what the CDC's willingness to investigate Pfizer vaccines potentially causing strokes and these excess deaths potentially point to. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says that a preliminary COVID-19 vaccine safety signal has been identified and is investigating whether the bivalent Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine creates an increased risk of ischemic stroke in people 65 and older. I like it when they come up with this like safety signal. Hey, we've had a little safety signal. What do you mean, safety signal? This sort of safety signal. Ah! That doesn't look like a very safe signal. That's just what we call it. Let's see how our old chums, the mainstream media, deal with this.
The CDC says there could be a safety issue with Pfizer's updated COVID-19 vaccine. New numbers reveal a possible increase in a certain type of stroke in people 65 and older.
I said could, possible, maybe, 65 and older, all of these conditions. Meanwhile,
who recently received one of the updated boosters.
I'm trying to tell you this at a disco. Hey, you know those vaccines? Yeah, no, it's all over the TV. Yeah, do you remember what we said? Yeah, that we should definitely take them, that if we took them, we definitely wouldn't get COVID, and it would stop people we love getting COVID. Yeah. Also, the CDC are now investigating whether or not the Pfizer vaccines cause strokes. Sorry, what was that last bit? It's a good song, yeah? It's got me in the mix. The rhythm's gonna get ya. Arrhythmia's gonna get ya. No, the rhythm's gonna get ya.
We're seeing vaccination increase, which is good.
Good, that's good. Any downside at all, though?
But we're also hearing something from the CDC. They're investigating a possible link between a heart condition and the vaccine in teens and young adults.
Oh, so as long as you're not young or old, you're fine.
What do we know? Keyword possible.
Yeah, possible. Don't get excited. Don't start thinking you can't trust us because we were the mouthpiece of Pfizer getting Albert Baller on the TV to tell you this was a moonshot and all that stuff. Possible's keyword. Yeah, possible. It was always possible. It should always have been discussed openly.
So here's the latest on this. First of all, just some terminology. This is a condition called myocarditis.
Hey, whoa, you can't say myocarditis on the... Oh, you can now. That's changed. Oh.
Perspective, please, because people hear this, they'll get concerned about the vaccine.
Hey, I'm here to do some sexy news. Let's get some perspective, some sexy perspective, some perspective. If people hear that, they'll stop worrying that we told them the vaccines are okay. So let's get some perspective. Don't matter if it's true or not, just provide it.
Perspective, please, because people hear this, they'll get concerned about the vaccine.
100%. I think this is a really good sign, you guys, the CDC being completely transparent that they're looking into this. But right now, there is no firm link.
All right.
Brilliant. Transparency, no firm link. Lovely. Let's go. In the Friday statement, the CDC said, following the availability and use of the updated bivalent COVID-19 vaccines, CDC's vaccine safety data link, a near real-time surveillance system, met the statistical criteria to prompt additional investigation investigation into whether there was a safety concern for ischemic stroke in people aged 65 and older who received the Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine bivalent, the CDC said. Oh, it's a lot of words, isn't it? Oh, it's so boring. What did your grandfather die of? I don't know, it was too boring to listen. Something to do with CDC statement on Friday? Rapid response investigation of the signal in the VSD. Signal? When do all this language? What's happening with language? Things that used to be neutral and meaningless are being escalated to being the most powerful and incendiary stuff in the world. Things that used to be bad, like dying, have been turned into the sort of brands for toothpaste. Signal. If you're interested in media analysis, and I assume you are, notice how boring the language is, how jargon-laden and full of acronyms and technicalities it is. Almost as if they're trying to bury significant information amidst a slew of words and language that's sort of difficult to pick truth out of. Bivalent were more likely to have an ischemic stroke in the 21 days following vaccination compared with days 22 to 44 following vaccination. According to the CDC, an ischemic stroke occurs when blood clots or other particles block the blood vessels to the brain. But luckily, Pfizer have got a lot of money available for research because they made $102 billion during 2022. But if you've seen our conversation with David Sirota from The Lever, you will know that pharmaceutical companies invest more money in managing their own stock prices through curious investment strategy than they do in investigating new drugs or improving the drugs that they have available. Now, just a few months ago, mentioning strokes and myocarditis in connection with the vaccine, which the CDC are now investigating, would get you banned from this platform and pretty much any social media platform that we now know have been deeply infiltrated by the CIA and by big pharma companies. One person who's managed to get on the mainstream media and espouse these controversial views is Aseem Malhotra, who's been on our show and is on our show again. Check it out on Rumble, talking about what he believes to be links between myocarditis and certain medications that are currently being investigated. What I like particularly about this clip is watching a person being on the mainstream media, watching information that if you're like us, you're kind of getting used to now, that you've been looking at already because you're into independent investigative journalism, you're open-minded and you don't want to believe in crazy conspiratorial stuff, but you do want to have access to information that the mainstream denies you access to because there's a lot of truth out there, as we're seeing as the stuff enters the acceptable conversation. It's really funny. You'll enjoy this.
Millions more people in England could be prescribed daily cholesterol-lowering statin pills.
So Aseem Malhotra is a cardiologist. His father was a cardiologist. He's a respected and eminent doctor, and he's on there to talk about statins.
Thank you for joining us this morning, Doctor.
He also, once he starts talking, will not stop talking, as you'll know if you've seen him on our show. So the newscaster's going to have a lot of trouble controlling him.
Good morning. Good morning.
I hate it when that happens to you. Yeah, I was going to say good morning.
In terms of what NICE are saying, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I have a great respect for NICE, but I think in this regard with statins, I think this guidance is misguided. The big issue really that's ongoing, which has been going on for years in this country, is that we've not been addressing unhealthy lifestyles, or certainly being effective in curbing unhealthy lifestyles.
He's already contradicting the advice we were given throughout the pandemic. Stay inside, don't exercise, get the vaccine, and we'll give you a free burger and fries.
Free fries when you get vaccinated? Vaccination.
The best way to prevent heart disease and even manage people with heart disease, whether or not they choose to take a statin, is actually through lifestyle changes.
So he's not promoting the statins. He's meant to be on there promoting the statins. Take another drug. Take another drug. Never mind getting out there exercising. Now, I know some people need pharmacological support. This is not like a unilateral condemnation of all medication. I've got parents who have had radiotherapy and stuff. I'm saying that there are ways to remain healthy that are not particularly profitable for the establishment.
On top of that, Luguesa, one of the reasons I think this has come into the news just now...
What?
...is obviously there's been a big concern recently around excess deaths.
Checks notes. Excess deaths? Wait a minute, this shouldn't be on proper news.
Now, the British Heart Foundation have said, certainly during the pandemic or since the pandemic, there's been 30,000 excess deaths specifically due to coronary artery disease. That's my area of expertise.
I don't care, you're the wrong type of expert.
And they're trying to figure out what's causing it. But what is almost certainly, and if you allow me to say this, Luguesa, what my own research has found...
We shouldn't allow you, and I'm going to get in a lot of trouble because I did allow you.
And this is something that is probably a likely contributory factor, is that the do carry a cardiovascular risk. And I've actually called for the suspension of this pending an inquiry because there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment about what's causing the excess deaths. Some of it will be ambulance delays. My own father, it was reported on BBC News in late 2021, I was the first to actually highlight the ambulance delays because my own father suffered a cardiac arrest at home.
It would be irresponsible to start putting together the excess deaths, the new investigations into the vaccines to look at whether or not they cause myocarditis and strokes. Similarly, I consider it to be irresponsible not to have a conversation about whether or not there is a causal link.
And when his post-mortem came out, he had very severe coronary artery disease, which is unexplainable. I then published in a peer-reviewed journal. They accepted my findings that the likely cause of his death was. So I think there's lots of...
Sorry, I just want to jump in on that point.
I just want to jump in because this is the mainstream media. Surely you're wanted on Rumble or somewhere where they do conspiracy theories? Well, I'm a cardiologist. You're the wrong type of cardiologist.
So what you're saying in terms of the mRNA...
Sorry, that information doesn't become acceptable for about another 6 months when we'll be so worried about Armageddon that we won't have time to think about this stuff.
That is it's been proven medically, has it?
In any research that we do, it's very difficult to always be absolutely conclusive. So we go on likelihoods. And there are lots of data now. The highest quality data is what we call randomized controlled trial evidence. So there was a reanalysis in the journal Vaccine published recently where they found that the original trials of Pfizer and Moderna with mRNA vaccines showed, and I just want to put this in absolute terms because we don't want to scare people unnecessarily, but the absolute risk of serious adverse events was at least.
Okay.
Let me know in the comments if you know that statistic. It cannot be broadcast here. It can be broadcast on Rumble.
Okay. So I just want to clarify one point here.
Would you fuck off?
That is using statins a cheaper, less resistant, but short-sighted approach.
But just can we go back to statins?
Yeah, I think you've summed it up perfectly.
Experts have criticised Dr. Asim Malhotra's appearance on the corporation's news channel on Friday, accusing him of pushing extreme fringe views which are misguided, dangerous and could mislead the public. When it says extreme fringe and misguided and dangerous, it seems like they've not caught up to where the narrative is now. The CDC are investigating things that are not a million miles away from what he's saying there. Scientists have described the doctor as hijacking an interview on statins to air his views, causing BBC staff to be alarmed and embarrassed by their booking. The piety of them and the haughtiness. You've hijacked this interview. This is an interview on statins. You're supposed to be here to promote a drug, to help a health issue, and then you've come on here as a doctor trying to prevent excess deaths. How dare you? Here's another mainstream media organisation, the British newspaper The Telegraph, discussing the excess deaths issue. Dr. Malhotra is right to say that heart deaths have increased alarmingly in the last few years. What a coincidence. According to the British Heart Foundation, there have been around 30,000 more deaths than expected involving heart disease since the pandemic began, more than 230 additional deaths over expected rates each week. In some weeks last year, there were more than 1,000 excess deaths with cardiovascular disease mentioned on the death certificate. Surprised I don't get anything else on the death certificate these days. COVID! No, but COVID! More than 650,000 deaths were registered in the UK in 2022, 9% more than 2019. That's quite significant. This represents one of the largest excess death levels outside the pandemic in 50 years. On the subject of cancer, the cost of the pandemic for cancer sufferers is starting to emerge, experts fear, as new figures show that hundreds more people than expected are dying each month in England from the disease. Charities and health experts are calling for the government to act, warning that misdiagnoses during lockdown may be a factor. Let's look at what we know. The CDC are investigating potential links between strokes and one of Pfizer's vaccines. We heard, at least in part, what Dr. Malhotra believes is the connection between myocarditis and certain medications. But if you look at this from a macro perspective for a moment, the fact is that by the end of the pandemic and the response to the pandemic, lockdown, vaccines, etc., 9% more people are dying. So whatever it is they did during that pandemic, all of the ideas that they were pushing, take these medications, lock yourself in your house, don't move, sit still, wear a mask. The result? More people have died than would usually die. You could say it killed people. And the whole point of it, as I understood it, was to preserve human life. The whole thing was underwritten by a regard for the sanctity of human life. We must do this. We must protect each other. We have to protect the vulnerable. We've got to take it. Well, the results are in, guys. More people died than was necessary. More people died as a result of those actions than would have died had those actions not taken place. For example, a new study by researchers at Johns Hopkins University reveals COVID lockdowns prevented only a small number of deaths caused by the virus. Now contrast that with increasing suicides, cancer, heart disease. An analysis of each found that lockdowns have little to no effect on COVID-19 mortality. It could have little effect or none. The numbers suggest lockdowns in Europe and the United States reduced the COVID-19 mortality rate by only an average of 0.2%. All of that hysteria, all of that propaganda, 0.2%. Researchers did find that lockdown orders caused enormous economic and social costs wherever they were implemented. The authors concluded that lockdown policies are ill-founded and suggested they should be rejected in future pandemics, and I would argue in other instances where lockdowns might be recommended. Keep watching your mainstream media news for more lockdowns coming. Here's the results of the response to the pandemic. More people died, economic crisis. But hold on, some people did well out of it. Oh yeah, Pfizer made 102 billion. Governments got the ability to regulate. Big tech became more powerful. Suddenly, social credit scoring seems more plausible and ID cards seem more reasonable. Wow, that's an incredible coincidence. Best not to look too deeply into that stuff. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these two. Turn on the notification bell and subscribe to this channel so we can remain in direct contact with you. We make new videos every single day just for you. Please stay connected to us. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. Let me know what you think in the chat. Give it a like. Love you. Stay free.